You're listening to Backchat with me, Jenny Lam, and Mike Rouse. We're talking about whether government should spend funding on IVF, in vitro fertilization. You can call us anytime on 233-88266. Our email is backchat@rthk.hk. Joining us on the line, we have Nixie Lam. She's a legislator from the DAB and also the mother of a child as a result of IVF. Good morning, Nixie.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. You were not happy when the Secretary for Health, Lo Chung-Mao, said that frozen seed may not grow on soil that deteriorates with age. Tell me about what you thought.
Well, I think I'm not the only one that's not very happy about the metaphor. And I think the whole speech, if you're listening carefully, he also stressed that we should let nature take its course. We shouldn't don't medicalize giving birth or things like that. I think if that's actually coming from like personal opinion, that was totally fine. But if he's the Secretary for Health, then there is pretty questionable why he would put things in that way in the Legislative Council in facing this sort of issues. Well, basically, the situation is we shouldn't ignore the fact that most of the women, most of the couples in Hong Kong only get married in their mid-30s. The average age for getting married in Hong Kong is ranging from around 32.7 to 9. So that's approaching 33. And if you're taking that number as an average number, that's more people that's getting married older than 33 years old.
Right.
So in that sort of situation, we should also look at, of course, we know, I think that is a factual things that everybody knows that if you want a fertile, having a baby, it's much easier or better or healthier for you to have it earlier in the days. But to be honest, in Hong Kong, most of us are highly educated. We go through university, we go through master degrees and things like that. Can we really have our baby when we're 18 or 20? It's pretty much difficult. And looking at the situation, how there's also the housing issues in Hong Kong, career path development and things like that. I think the government should really formulate reasonable policies around things like that.
I know that your IVF journey was not an easy one, but before you considered IVF, did you consider fostering or adopting children?
Yeah, I had 3 failed miscarriage 3 times before I went through IVF. I would say I'm the lucky one that I only need 1 IVF treatment, which I only harvest my egg once, and I have enough healthy eggs to go through all the process, and I got pregnant only once.
I'm asking,
right?
did you consider adopting or fostering children instead of IVF?
No.
Why is that?
I think that was in our discussion that we hope to have our own baby and things like that. We actually had that discussion with me and my husband when we failed the 3rd time to say what should we do? Should we continue trying again? Because every time when we fail having a baby, I have to go through operations to remove the dead baby body or whatever embryo inside. So I actually went through quite a bit of procedures, medical procedures, operations on dealing with that. So it's not that easy.
Sure, of course, but I'm what I'm getting at is how do you justify public funding for a very personal problem? How do you justify public funding?
No. I think mainly my suggestion is to have an open floor for everyone in the Legislative Council to discuss whether or what sort of policies that we should formulate around that problem. It's a factual problem that a lot of people get married in their mid-30s. Hence, we have quite a bit of married couple facing this sort of issues. Only by looking at how the government can actually support, though, we're not only talking about money. If you're looking at the storage period for the eggs, there's a 10 years maximum a period of time that you can actually store your eggs, but that is totally sort of nonsense. It's not like an expiry date after 10 years your eggs will be expired or something like that. It's not. I've been asking the Secretary of Health, Health Bureau on why are we having that restrictions in Hong Kong while the other countries are having unlimited dates. They don't have any answers to that. So that sort of policies, can we actually loosen up a bit to extend that to 30 years for women to have like things like that? A lot of the policies at the moment should actually face the fact that this is the social sort of situation.
I want to put maybe it's a bit difficult for a man here to come in and argue about the merits of IVF. But I'm just wondering, I understand removing all the disincentives for couples to have their own children, giving more support and that, okay, I'm comfortable with that. I'm even sort of in line, I guess, and accepting a degree of assistance, publicly funded assistance to help people have babies and they can't themselves, even though I know they want to, and I know how important it is and makes a difference to people's lives. But there is a difference between supporting a woman to actually have the baby when she's in her 50s or 60s.
No, I didn't suggest that to extend to that age. If you look carefully on my suggestion, I actually suggest that not having the government to fund most of the funds. I have been telling, this is actually the second time I said that in the Legislative Council, that whether the government can actually consider charging overseas patients on an extra fundings and put that money into supporting the local couples. The government first response when I mentioned about it, I think about a month ago on another issues, they said, well, we don't have enough public fundings, and hence I gave out, well, why can't we actually have that extra dollar coming into like a fund pool or whatever, and to subsidize those couples in need in Hong Kong to do that in private practice.
Who would be paying that fee? Sorry, I'm not clear.
No, overseas clients.
Actually, you mean provide this service for overseas client and building a pool to serve Hong Kong women?
Yes,
is that what you're saying?
When overseas couples, they come to Hong Kong for that surgery or whatever, or support or whatever, they can charge them an extra fee. So having that extra fee, you can put that into a fund pool to make sure that that money can be actually invested or be utilized for the local Hong Kong couples.
What?
Of course, there should be a limit. Well, that's some sort of couple situation will be very difficult to even though you go through 20 times of IVF. But there should be a limit, of course. But at the moment, as a lot of the other policies that we should really look at is more than, say, at the moment in Hong Kong, if you want to go through IVF procedures in the public sector, basically you have to wait for 2 to 3 years. As you know, you're actually competing with time. That 2 to 3 years waiting time or waiting in line, it is basically quite tough.
But there are many procedures that, cataract, for example, sometimes people have to wait a long time too in the public healthcare system.
So that's why we should actually look into the situation to see whether we can have, say, some of the early sort of diagnosis, whether that can be done by some sort of like professional nurses, things like that. So you don't need to go through.
What sort of age should women consider really not bearing a child, whether their IVF is paid for or not paid for, whatever? At what sort of age should they just accept that?
Reason I think at the moment, we should actually look at somebody that was before 50.
Right. I mean, we had two doctors in here just now, sure. and they were talking about so typically, the maximum amount of time right now is 10 years. Mm-hmm. You are saying it should be more than 10 years. Am I understanding you correctly?
Yeah. The reason behind that is when you are having your sort of best ache sort of period of time, you should be in your mid-20s, right? It's the calculation when you're having to do like egg storaging when you're 25. In Hong Kong, you have to use an egg with your husband. So it's like a marriage-based sort of like medical procedure. You have to have your marriage certificate and things like that. So when you store your eggs when you are 25, you have to use it before 35 when you have a husband. in that sort of context, you have to find a husband before 35. But realistically, in Hong Kong, it's quite difficult. So if you want our women to be well prepared in that sort of situation, maybe we should extend that to a longer period. I'm not talking about in some countries that you have an unlimited sort of a period of time that will make some legal problems in some sense. But I think 10 to 30 years would be something more sensible.
So that the woman could save the eggs when she's younger and give her a bit more of a window.
I think that argument, we can't say right or wrong, but the argument from the government's perspective is that you should have your babies when you're younger. But reality in Hong Kong basically is not very feasible if you are not, if you're like a normal sort of 9 to 5 sort of like working class. It's really difficult. You have to find a job and where you live and things like that. But it's just like buying like an insurance for having a baby in the future, you know, for a lot of the women to store the egg when the eggs are pretty much very healthy. So I think we really need to look at all the all of the current policies on whether we can loosen up some part of it. And also there's some requirements for when you go through public IVF procedures in Hong Kong. You have to be not over 40 years old in Hong Kong. And the couple shouldn't have any children themselves. So that sort of situation, whether we can extend, a lot of the other legislatures were suggesting that whether we can extend that 40 years old to older. But of course, the Secretary of Health is saying, well, the line is already long enough, so we're not trying to extend that. So I think we should look at, when we are looking at how we formulate policies, we really need to look at the real situation in like what is being happening in Hong Kong and how we can actually sort of loosen up or better refine the current policy, not to just keep on telling you, well, you should have your baby when you are younger, when your soil is much healthier and things like that. I think that sort of metaphor is just like if you listen to the whole conversation or the ending speech coming from the Secretary of Health is quite disappointing.
Seems to be reinforcing some rather conservative views culturally.
Yeah, and he has been using quite some minutes to detailedly describing how the IVF procedure is, hoping to let you know all the risks. It sounds to any women that he's totally discouraging use, even though if you're old, then don't go through this procedure because you're gonna die. That is what I get, and that is all the other women that my friends has been listening. What he's been saying is telling me this is totally discouraging women to some extent. It's just disappointing.
Well, you went through an IVF, so I presume you know a community of people who have this kind of experience, right? So typically, how old are these women?
Yeah, in mid-30s. I know some of my friends were even in their late 20s. It's not only the age. I mean, there's a lot of other health issues that we've been going through. But people are more willing to try when they're in their mid-30s or closing to 40s, because that is basically like the last sort of like time that you can actually try it on to get pregnant, you know, that sort of urge of fighting with time or things like that. That's why I went through IVF immediately when I turned 40.
Right, but you're saying that eggs should be stored for more than 10 years. So yeah. I mean, how common is it for a 25-year-old to want to store her eggs? Okay, a 35-year-old I can understand. 35 and then 10 years, you'll be 45. And then now you're saying probably it's not a good idea to have your child after 40. So I'm just trying to work with the numbers here.
I didn't say that it's not a good time to have your baby after 40. There's a lot of people having that. It's just that if you're saying that the best time, of course, the eggs is the best time when you're in your mid-20s. That's why we're doing the sort of like a vaguely estimation on whether we should extend that 10 to 30 years. Right?
Store the eggs at 25 and then have the baby anytime from 40 to 45.
If you're doing, and also I think the most important part of my speech is telling the health secretary that a lot of the women are not very aware of the health healthiness of their own, like women's sort of like reproductive like organs or things like that. We don't do much checking. I remember when I was studying in Australia, we do a lot of pap smear checking, and we were told that you have to do every year and things like that. And a lot of the women were having some like the cysts or tumors in their body, in that part of the body, and they found it out until it's more than 10 centimeters.
All right.
I was told once by a Chinese doctors, Chinese medicine doctors in Hong Kong, that most of the younger women found out their cysts when there's only 3 or 4 centimeters. She was surprised when she started working in Hong Kong to find out most of the Hong Kong girls didn't realize that. I think the government, I also suggest that the government should provide some funding to
better
educate our younger
for
women.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
plan early, right?
Thank you very much, Nixie Lam, for joining us this morning. She's a lawmaker from the DAB.